The space station floated quietly above the frozen moon. Far away from any human city, it was cold inside, full of metal walls, blinking lights, and strange alien languages. Most days were the same, full of dull work and long hours, but everything changed when she arrived. She was small, with silver skin that shimmered under the lights. Her hair was short and white like snow, and her eyes were bright blue and sharp. She looked like a child, but there was something fierce about the way she walked. She wore a black uniform tighter than most, the symbol of her warrior clan stitched over her chest. Yarrow, a human engineer, was the one fixing a power node when she entered the control room for the first time. He barely looked up, used to aliens avoiding him, whispering about humans being too emotional or too slow. But she didn't avoid him. She walked right up to him, tilted her head, and said, "So, you're the famous human they warned us about." Yarrow blinked, surprised, then shrugged. "Yeah, that's probably me." She didn't smile, but her tone had a sharpness. "I thought humans were bigger," she said, looking him up and down. "I thought warriors were quieter," he replied. Calmly, the room went quiet. A few alien officers nearby glanced over, expecting a fight. Instead, she laughed, a short, cold laugh, then turned and walked away. From that moment, she made it her mission to tease him every day. She followed him through the halls, often pretending to check his work. She poked at his tools, asked stupid questions, then made fun of his answers. She called him slow when he carried heavy boxers. She said things like, "Your bones must be made of bread," and laughed when he ignored her. Other workers noticed but said nothing. Yarrow had always been quiet, always calm. He never reacted. Not even when she placed a slimy alien worm on his chair one morning. He just picked it up with a napkin and kept working. But something about her behavior was strange. She was trying too hard to get his attention. She'd throw pebbles at his boots during training, stand too close during drills, and always challenge his answers. Yet she always looked away when he tried to meet her eyes. One day she stood on a crate beside him during a team test and said loudly, "You smell like old socks." Everyone laughed, even the captain. Yarrow stayed silent, his jaw tight. When the test ended, she followed him again, but this time said nothing. He noticed her grip on her tablet was too tight, like she was trying to hold back something. Later that night, Yarrow sat on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't sleep, her voice echoing in his head. Why was she doing all this? Why him? He shook his head and turned off the lights, but just as his eyes closed, he heard it, a soft sound like a whimper outside his door. He sat up slowly, listening. Another soft cry, broken and quiet. He got up, walked to the door, and opened it carefully. There she was, curled up beside his door, arms around her knees, shaking. Her eyes were red, and her silver skin looked pale in the hallway light. "What are you doing out here?" he asked gently. She didn't look at him, just whispered, "I didn't know where else to go." He hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." She stood slowly, walked in without speaking, and sat on the edge of his bunk. He gave her a blanket, then sat across the room, waiting for a while. There was only silence. Then, in a broken voice, she said, "They want me to act like I'm perfect, always strong, always cold." She wiped her eyes with the blanket. "But I'm not, and if they see me weak, they'll send me back in shame." Yarrow watched her carefully. So that's what it was. The teasing, the jokes, the cruel smiles, all a mask. She was scared, lonely, and trying to hide it. "I didn't mean to make you hate me," she said softly. "I don't hate you," Yarrow replied, "but I think you're carrying too much for someone so small." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "You don't think I'm weak?" "No," he said. "I think you're brave for still standing for the first time." Her face softened. She nodded, then lay down on the bunk, pulling the blanket around her. "I'll leave in the morning," she whispered. Just let me stay here tonight. Yarrow nodded once, turned off the light, and sat back down in the darkness. He heard her breathing slow, but before she fell asleep, she whispered again, "Thank you, Yaman." And just like that, everything began to change. The room was quiet, except for the sound of the tiny alien girl breathing under the blanket. Yarrow sat in the corner, his back against the wall, watching the shadows dance from the hallway light. He wasn't sure if letting her stay was the right thing, but something in her eyes, earlier those shaking, tired eyes, told him she had nowhere else to go. She didn't cry loudly anymore, but every now and then, he heard a small sniffle under the blanket. She was trying to be quiet, still hiding even in her pain. He closed his eyes and rested his head against the metal wall. Thinking, at dawn, he stood up, stretched quietly, and walked to the food dispenser. He ordered warm tea and a protein bar, and placed them on the table beside her. She was still curled up asleep, but her hand slowly reached for the cup without even opening her eyes. "You don't have to go yet," Yarrow said softly. "No one's looking for you right now." Her eyes opened slowly. Still red and heavy, she stared at the cup, then looked at him. "You sure?" she asked, her voice hoarse. He nodded. "Yeah." She sat up slowly. Pulling the blanket tighter around herself, she drank in silence, then broke the stillness. "My name is Rilla," she said. "You should know that if you're going to see me like this, Yarrow," he said back. "But you already knew that." She gave a small smile. A real one this time, not the mocking kind. There was silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable now. Yarrow waited as she sipped her tea like a child holding warmth with both hands. Then she spoke, slowly, like she was choosing every word carefully. "I was never meant to pass the test," she whispered. "My clan. They only sent me here to fail." Yarrow frowned. "Why?" She looked away, ashamed. "Because I cry? Because I'm short? Because I don't fight like them? They say I was born weak." Her voice cracked at that last word, but she forced it back down. "They don't believe in second chances," she added. "Just strength." Yarrow sat down on the edge of his bunk, his voice calm. "You don't seem weak to me." Rilla looked at him like she didn't believe him. "You think? Crying in front of a human makes me strong?" she asked bitterly. "No," Yarrow replied. "I think coming here alone, pretending to be fearless, while carrying all that pain inside, that strength." Rilla didn't speak for a while. Then she whispered, "When I first teased you, I thought if I made fun of you, no one would look at me too closely." She gave a sad laugh. "But you didn't react, and that made it worse, I thought." "Maybe you didn't feel anything." Yarrow shook his head. "I felt it, but I saw what you were doing." "You weren't being mean, Rilla. You were trying to protect yourself." Tears began to roll down her cheeks again, slow and silent. She didn't wipe them this time. She just let them fall. Then she did something Yarrow didn't expect. She reached forward, gently, and held his arm. "I don't want to go back," she whispered. "Not until I prove I'm not broken." Yarrow met her eyes and nodded. "Then don't go back yet." She blinked, confused. "But where can I stay?" "I can't hide here forever." "You won't have to," Yarrow said. "You're on a neutral space station now, not your clan's base. I can help you train, learn, and grow. If that's what you want." Rilla's lips parted slightly, a mixture of shock and hope on her face. "You would do that?" she asked. "Yes," Yarrow said, "but only if you stop throwing things at my boots." She laughed softly through her tears. "The sound fragile but real. Deal," she said, and wiped her face. "No more pebbles." The rest of the day passed. Quietly, Yarrow gave her an old datapad with training guides and invited her to meet him in the maintenance wing after hours. Rilla agreed, promising she would be there. By evening, she returned to her assigned dorm for appearances. But her steps were lighter. She looked over her shoulder once, saw Yarrow watching from the hall and gave him a small nod. It wasn't a goodbye, was a beginning. That night, Yarrow sat alone again, the bunk empty. The blanket folded, but something had changed in the air. The teasing was gone, but something stronger had taken its place. Respect, maybe, or understanding. He leaned back, eyes closing slowly. Somewhere on the station, a girl who had once mocked him was now holding her head. Hey, because someone believed in her, and Yarrow knew. This was only the start. The next night, just as the artificial lights dimmed to simulate sleep hours, Rila showed up at the old maintenance wing. Her boots made soft taps on the metal floor, and she held the training datapad tight to her chest. Yarrow was already there, wearing a worn-out utility jacket and holding two metal rods that looked like practice swords. She looked around the empty space, full of broken parts, crates, and dusty corners. "This your secret gym?" she asked, half smiling. Yarrow tossed her one of the rods. Only when no one's watching, she caught it easily and gave it a few swings. "It's heavy," she said. "Good," he replied. "That means it'll teach you something." From that night on, their deal began. She wouldn't tease him anymore, and he would train her strength. Focus, human-style tactics, all of it. But the teasing didn't disappear completely. Rila still rolled her eyes when he spoke too slowly, still smirked when she dodged faster than he expected. But now, it felt different, more like a game between equals than cruel jokes. Every evening, they met in the maintenance wing. First, physical drills, lifting boxes, balance training, reaction tests, then mental exercises, strategy sims, escape routes. Problem-solving under stress, Rila took every lesson seriously. Her playful mask gone when she was focused. Yarrow noticed how fast she learned, how sharp her instincts were. She wasn't broken at all. She was just shaped by fear, trying to survive. In a world that didn't allow softness, one night, after a long training session, she collapsed to the floor, breathing hard. Why are humans so obsessed with pain? She groaned. Yarrow laughed, handing her water. Because we learn from it. She took a sip, then looked at him carefully. "No one back home ever trained me like this," she said quietly. "They just gave orders and waited for me to fail." "You're not going to fail here," Yarrow said. "Not while I'm around." For the first time, she looked like she believed him. Word about Rila began to spread slowly across the station. Aliens noticed her sharper movements, quicker answers, and calmer tone. Some were surprised, others confused. Her sudden improvement made her stand out, and not everyone liked that. One of the senior alien cadets, a broad-shouldered brute named Koresh, started watching her too closely. During meal breaks, he would speak loud enough for her to hear. "Some cadets think they can change their nature," he sneered. "But weakness always shows." Rila pretended not to care, but her jaw tightened every time Yarrow warned her to be careful. "They'll test you harder now," he said. "Because they're scared of your rise. Let them." "Try," she replied. "I'm not scared anymore." One evening, she asked Yarrow a question he wasn't expecting. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, sitting on a crate, sweaty and tired. "You don't owe me anything." Yarrow paused for a moment, thinking. "Because I've been where you are," he said finally. "I was sent here as a mistake." Rila blinked, surprised. "I was supposed to be a backup engineer," Yarrow continued. "Not skilled enough, not fast enough. Just filled the numbers, but I stayed, worked harder, kept quiet, and waited for my chance. And now?" she asked. "Now, I'm still waiting," he smiled. "But I won't let someone like you get pushed out like they tried to do to me." Rila didn't speak for a while. Then she stood up, raised her practice rod, and said, "Then let's train harder." And they did, night after night. But Yarrow was right. Someone was watching. Security logs showed extra access requests. Around the maintenance wing, someone was trying to track them. One night, Yarrow returned to his room and found his locker open. Nothing was stolen, but one thing was added, a note. It read, "Your pet project will fall." Step aside. He crumpled the note, heart beating faster. Someone didn't want Rila to succeed, and they were ready to act the next day. Yarrow didn't tell Rila about the note. He didn't want her to carry that weight yet. Instead, he trained her harder, faster, as if time was running out. Rila didn't complain. She pushed herself beyond her limits. After a hard drill, she sat beside him, legs shaking. "Do you think I'm ready for the official trials?" she asked. Yarrow looked at her, the fire in her eyes, the strength in her voice. "You're more than ready," he said. "But they're not ready for you." She smiled at that, but it faded quickly. "I just want to prove I belong," she whispered. Yarrow nodded. "And you will."
Yes.
They walked out of the maintenance wing that night. Neither of them saw the shadow slipping away into the ventilation duct. But something was coming. And their secret deal had just become dangerous. Asterisk, the day of the strength assessment came faster than anyone expected. It wasn't just about lifting weights or running drills. This test was designed to expose weakness, physical, mental, and emotional. The alien clans believed only the toughest should move forward. For someone like Rila, the test was a trap. Still, she stood tall in the training dome, helmet tucked. Under one arm, Yarrow watched from the tech booth above. Heart pounding with quiet pride, she wore the dark blue cadet gear. A small warrior among larger figures, but she didn't flinch. Didn't hide, she was ready. The trial began. Each cadet had to complete a timed obstacle course, fight in hand-to-hand combat. Then complete a logic test under pressure. Rila moved fast and clean, surprising even the judges. She was lighter than her enemies, quicker on her feet in her final match. She dodged a heavy tail strike and pinned her opponent using a technique Yarrow had taught her, a human method adapted to her smaller frame. By the end of the test, the board displayed her name high on the scoreboard, second place overall. Cadets whispered in shock. Officers raised their brows. A few even clapped quietly. Yarrow smiled, leaning back with relief. But something felt off. There was a strange silence. Among the high-ranking officers, no nods of approval, no words of praise, just tight lips and sideways glances. Later that night, Rila was called to the operations office. Yarrow waited near the hallway, unsure, pacing. When she finally walked out, her face was pale, eyes wide. With disbelief, they said, "I cheated," she whispered, voice shaking. "They say my results were too good to be real." "What?" Yarrow stepped forward. "That's not true. You trained." They showed a report. She interrupted, her voice cracking. "It says I accessed restricted strategy files, boosted my performance record, and tampered with the sim data." Yarrow's mind raced. He had seen her work every night, sweat through every drill. He knew she hadn't touched anything illegal. This wasn't just a mistake. This was sabotage. He took her by the arm and pulled her toward the tech wing. They needed to check the logs, the system files, everything. But when they reached the server room, the archive terminals were locked. An error message blinked on every screen. "Access denied." File corrupted. Yarrow's stomach dropped. Someone had erased the truth. He turned to Rila, who now stood still, her arms hanging at her sides. "I knew they didn't want me here," she said softly. "But I didn't think they'd destroy my name just to send me away." She looked up at him with tired, wet eyes. "I did everything right. And still I lose." "No," Yarrow said firmly. "Not this time." But his hands were tied. They had no proof, no access. And the station council had already issued a warning. Human interference in alien assessments is not permitted. The next morning, Rila was moved back to the cold, windowless dorm reserved for probation cadets. Her meals were rationed, her tablet was locked. Other cadets whispered when she passed. A few laughed. One left a note on her bunk. Softness always breaks. That night, Yarrow waited in the maintenance wing. But she didn't come. He sat alone on the crate, the silence around him louder than any engine hum. Part of him wanted to storm the command room and demand justice, but that wouldn't help her. He had to be smarter. He opened his own logs, traced their training times, cross-checked internal scans from nearby cameras. Most had been wiped, but one rusty camera in an old hallway still had data. It showed Rila leaving training late at night, tired but determined. No cheating, no tampering, just hard work. He copied the footage to a hidden drive and locked it away. Not enough to clear her yet, but it was a start. The next day, he found her sitting alone behind the engineering deck, knees pulled to her chest. She looked up but didn't speak. He sat beside her and said nothing for a while. "I miss the training." She whispered, "I miss feeling strong." "You are strong," Yarrow said gently. She shook her head, not strong enough to fight lies. Yarrow looked at her, his voice calm but serious. "Then we don't fight the lie," he said. "We outlive it." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he continued, "we keep training in secret. We get better, smarter. And when your real test comes, not their fake one, you'll be ready." Rila stared at him, silent, then, slowly, a spark returned to her eyes. "All right," she said softly, "but no more easy drills." Yarrow smiled. "Wouldn't dream of it." They walked back through the station's lower level. It's quiet and hidden. Above them, officers still talked and judged. But below, in the metal veins of the station, something stronger was being built. Not through rank, not through power, but through trust. And this time, no one would erase it. The hidden hallway beneath the old coolant pipes became their new training ground. It was narrow, dusty, and full of echoes, but no one ever came down there anymore. Yarrow had rerouted the security sensors so their movements wouldn't be recorded. Every night, while others slept or gathered in the food halls, Rila and Yarrow trained in silence. She had stopped smiling, stopped joking. But her eyes burned brighter than ever. Each strike she made was sharper, each step quicker. Pain didn't slow her down anymore. Failure didn't scare her either. Yarrow had never seen someone grow so fast under pressure. She was like a blade being sharpened again and again. But even blades could break if pushed too far. One night, after an intense match, Rila collapsed against the wall, gasping. "I can't keep doing this forever," she whispered. "It's like I'm fighting ghosts." "You're not fighting ghosts," Yarrow replied, handing her water. "You're fighting the people who gave up on you before they ever saw your worth." She nodded slowly, then asked something she hadn't asked before. "Why do you care so much?" Yarrow looked at her carefully. "Because someone once saved me when I was invisible too," he said. "I made a promise that if I ever had the chance, I'd do the same." Rila didn't reply, but something softened in her expression. She didn't tease him anymore, didn't joke. But now and then, she sat closer, and she listened to every word like it mattered. One evening, while they were practicing a move designed to throw off bigger enemies, she lost balance and twisted her ankle. Yarrow rushed forward, worried, but she waved him off. "I'm fine," she said through gritted teeth, but he saw the pain behind her mask. She sat on the crate, wrapping the joint with a cloth. "I don't want to stop," she said. "If I stop, they win. You don't have to prove everything in one night," Yarrow said gently. She looked at him with eyes that had seen too many closed doors. "But if I don't keep going, what do I have left?" Yarrow crouched in front of her, steady and calm. "You have me," he said. "And you have yourself. Strength isn't in how fast you run or how hard you hit. It's in choosing to stand back up when the world says stay down." Rila nodded, eyes wet but steady. That night, they skipped training, and Yarrow sat beside her in silence. Sometimes healing came from being seen, not from fighting, but above the floor they trained on. things were changing. The cadets whispered. Louder now, Rila's return to training hadn't gone unnoticed. Koresh, the same alien who mocked her before, was watching again. One afternoon, Rila passed him in the main hallway. He stepped in front of her, smirking, still pretending. You belong here. He said loudly. She didn't answer, just looked at him, calm and silent. Koresh leaned in close, his voice low. You and your human toy won't change anything. She stepped around him and walked away. But her fists were tight, her steps sharp. Later that night, she arrived at training early, fists shaking. I want to fight him, she said. Not now, Yarrow replied. Wait for the right time. She gritted her teeth. He's not going to give me a right time. No, Yarrow said. But when? He does. You'll be ready. And that moment came sooner than they thought. A surprise combat trial was announced. All cadets were to face off in a tournament-style challenge. One-on-one matches. No ranks, no favoritism. It was meant to strengthen unity. But everyone knew it was just a show of power. Rila's name was on the list. Matched against Koresh in the first round, she stood in the ring, hands steady, breath slow. The crowd was quiet at first. No one expected her to last 5 seconds. Koresh stepped into the circle, grinning. This won't take long, he muttered. But Yarrow stood near the back of the crowd, watching, silent. The bell rang and Koresh charged like a boulder. But Rila didn't dodge backward. She stepped too. The side used his weight and rolled over his back. He turned in shock, but she was already behind him. Striking his knee joint, then his shoulder, every move was precise. Every angle designed by hours of secret training. The crowd gasped. Koresh tried to swing, but she dropped low, swept his feet, and pressed her hand against his neck. The bell rang again, match over, silence, then a roar of surprise. Some cheering, some whispering. Yarrow smiled quietly, arms crossed. Rila didn't raise her hands in victory. She just looked up at the officers watching from the platform and held there. Gaze, no lies this time, no cheating, just truth shown through action. That night, as the ring emptied and the lights dimmed, Rila walked to where Yarrow stood. She didn't speak, but her eyes said everything. He nodded once. "You're ready?" he said. Yes. But both of them knew the real test hadn't even started yet, because when strength is hidden and truth is dangerous, victory only draws more enemies from the shadows. The tournament changed everything. Rila's victory over Koresh wasn't just surprising, it was dangerous. The officers didn't say it out loud, but their silence was loud enough. A soft cadet, trained by a human, had just taken down one of their best, and now the council had to act. 3 days later, a message appeared on Rila's datapad. Midnight challenge, top cadets only, final trial begins tonight. She showed it to Yarrow in the storage hallway, her hands shaking slightly. "They never do trials at night," she said, voice low. "It's not a test," Yarrow replied. "It's a trap," but Rila didn't back away. "I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered. "If they want to test me, I'll show them everything." Yarrow nodded, but his worry didn't leave his face. He tightened the wraps on her hands and gave her one last look. "Just remember, fight smart, not just strong." That night, the ring was set in the dark. Center dome of the station, no cheering crowds, no flashing lights, only a few high-ranking officers watching from above. 6 top cadets stood inside the circle, including Rila. It wasn't one-on-one this time. It was a free-for-all. "No teams," the lead officer said. "No rules, just survive." Rila scanned the others. Koresh was there again, smirking. Another was twice her size, wearing body armor. One looked like a spider with 6 thin arms. The bell rang, and chaos exploded. Koresh rushed straight at her, fury in his eyes. Rila dodged left. Barely avoiding his elbow, she flipped backward and landed near the spider-like cadet. The creature hissed and lunged at her with razor-sharp limbs. She remembered Yarrow's training, move where they least expect. She rolled beneath the swing, grabbed a broken piece of staff from the floor, and jabbed upward. The spider cadet stumbled, shrieking, and backed off. Koresh came again. Roaring like a wild beast, he tackled her hard, slamming her to the ground. Her ribs screamed in pain. Her breath caught, but then she smiled. "Got you," she whispered, and kicked upward with both legs. Flipping him over her head, he landed hard, and for a moment didn't move. But it wasn't over. The last cadet, the armored one, approached slowly, blade drawn. She had no weapon, no energy left, only grit. He swung at her, wide and heavy. She ducked barely and spun behind him. She climbed his back like a cat, wrapped her arms around his throat. And squeezed, he thrashed and stumbled, but her grip didn't break. Finally, he dropped to his knees, gasping, and fell forward. The bell rang again, loud and final. Rila stood alone, bruised, panting, bleeding from a cut near her temple. But she was the last one standing. Above her, the officers didn't clap, didn't cheer. They whispered among themselves, confused, unsure what to do with her. She wasn't supposed to win. Not like this. Not in front of them. Yarrow waited in the dark corner near the edge of the dome, hidden from view. His heart swelled with pride, but also with fear. If they couldn't break her through fighting, they might try something worse. Rila was sent back to her dorm without a word, no praise, no medal, just silence. She sat on her bunk, staring at the floor, her body shaking from exhaustion. Then the door clicked open. Yarrow slipped in, carrying a warm cloth and a small canister of healing gel. He sat beside her and began cleaning her cuts without saying a word. After a while, she spoke. "I beat them all," she whispered. "I know," he said, softly. "But I don't feel like I won." He looked at her, because the real fight was never in the ring. She leaned her head against his shoulder, her voice barely above a breath. "If they send me away now, it'll be like none of this mattered." "No," Yarrow said. "You showed them what you are, even if they won't say it out loud. You're more than a fighter, Rila. You're proof that strength can come from something they don't understand." For a long time, they sat like that, her head resting against him, his hand gently over hers. And when she finally closed her eyes, she whispered, "I don't want to be alone again." "You're not," he replied. The hallway lights dimmed outside her door. The cold walls around them held their silence, but inside that tiny dorm room, something powerful had grown, not from rank, or rules, or blood, but from trust, belief, and the quiet bond between two souls who refused to let each other fall. And though the council didn't know it yet, they had created a warrior they could never control. The morning after the midnight challenge, Rila didn't wake up to cheers or medals. She woke up to orders. A cold message blinked on her datapad. "Cadet Rila, return transport to home planet arrives at 1600 station time. Prepare for departure, Yarrow." Read it over her shoulder. His jaw clenched. "They're sending you away," he said, his voice low and hard. "They can't erase what you did last night, so they're burying it." Rila sat still, silent, the blankets still wrapped around. Her face showed no tears, no anger. Just the same quiet strength he'd come to know. "They were always going to send me back," she said calmly, "no matter how many fights I won." Yarrow paced the room, trying to think. "We have footage of the challenge," he said. "We can send it to the outer councils, upload it to public archives." "No," she interrupted gently. "If you do that, they'll punish you next. They'll say you corrupted a warrior bloodline with human weakness." Yarrow sat down across from her, defeated. "So that's it," he whispered. "You're just going to walk away." She looked at him slowly, her voice softer than ever. "I'm not walking away," she said. "I'm walking forward." That day, she wore the same dark uniform. But this time, she added something new. Yor's old utility patch faded. With a human symbol stitched quietly into her collar, she walked down the long docking hall, past the cadets who had once mocked her. Some stepped aside in silence. Others watched without speaking, eyes lowered at the platform, a silver transport. Ship waited, its ramp open like a mouth ready to swallow her back into the life she escaped. High-ranking officers stood beside it, giving no words of thanks, no praise. She bowed her head to them without emotion, then turned around. Yarrow was there, waiting at the very edge of the restricted line. His arms crossed, eyes locked on hers. Neither spoke right away. Finally, she stepped forward. He held something out. A small item wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it slowly. It was a custom-made dado ship filled with every training session, every lesson, every moment they shared. Her hands trembled slightly as she held it. "I don't know what's waiting for me back home," she said, "but I'll carry this." "With me," Yarrow nodded, his voice tight. "You'll never be what they tried to make you. You're already something more." She stepped closer, and for a moment, looked unsure, then, without warning, she wrapped her arms around him and buried her face against his chest. He stood frozen, then gently held her back. Her voice was muffled but clear. "I used to think being small made me weak," she whispered. "But you saw me even when I was invisible. You taught me how to fight. But more than that, you let me cry." Yarrow's throat tightened. "You were never weak," he said. "You just needed someone who didn't look away." She pulled back, wiping her face. Her eyes were glassy but bright. "I don't want to." "Say goodbye," she whispered. "You don't have to," he replied. "Just say, I'll see you again." She smiled at that, the first real smile in days. Then she reached into her sleeve and pulled out something small, her warrior badge. She pressed it into his hand. On the back, carved in tiny letters, were two initials, HS Human Strength. She stepped back. Slowly walking toward the transport, the officers gave a quick nod, and the ramp lifted behind her, sealing her inside. Yarrow watched as the ship hummed to life, lifted off, and disappeared into the stars. The docking bay emptied, but Yarrow stayed, still holding the badge in his hand, still hearing her voice in his head. That night, he returned to the training wing. The empty crates, the dusty floors, the dented practice rods, all waiting in silence. He picked one up and began training alone. Every move he made echoed with her memory. Because Rilla wasn't gone, not really. She had left behind something no order could erase, a legacy of quiet. Courage, of midnight tears turned into fire, of a bond between two outcasts who found strength not in power, but in kindness, and somewhere far away, on a planet that once called her broken, a tiny alien girl stood tall in front of her clan, eyes strong, badge shining, carrying a piece of human strength in her heart, and never looking back.